I had a bit of a rough stream yesterday. I wasn't happy with how yesterday's daily came out. I was a little bit upset yesterday. I was very tired and sleepy, and yesterday's stream overall was really average. But then today I was like, you know what? I'm going to be well rested. So I went to sleep so early last night. I discovered this amazing podcast called Myths and Legends, where the guy literally just like reads you stories. This shit put me to sleep immediately. It was so good. It was actually really good. I finally heard the tale of Beowulf and whatnot. I looked at my phone this morning and apparently it played like 20 other podcasts while I was sleeping that I didn't even realize. But yeah, I'm here. I'm refreshed. I'm happy. And we are going to do the PiG Daily episode number 119. It's going to be a very simple build order daily today. Looking at Terran versus Terran, a matchup where a lot of people have a lot of issues with just dying. In the early game, it's a little bit vicious, it's a little bit fast paced. So I'm going to show you guys a build. Now, if you're a GM player, you're like, I'm a semi-pro or something, I'm going to learn something from Pig's Daily. Maybe not today. This is a build which I had kind of seen people do similar things, but I basically created it myself off a very common opening. So while it's very similar to a lot of things out there, it's got its own little quirks. It's probably not quite as efficient as something someone like TY would put out there. But what I found interesting here is I can kind of take my own experiences in TvT, allowing me to kind of survive the chaos and hopefully pass that on to a lot of players who are struggling in the matchup. So what I'm going to show you first of all is just the opening build order. And then we're going to go into a quick replay showing me doing it on ladder. And we're going to talk about all the different unit interactions. As you can see, I'm playing against the ever difficult opponent, the very easy AI. Oh my god. Very hard to beat this guy. Look at that beautiful depot placement. So sexy. So, yeah, let's walk you guys through the build order to start things out. So, going to be going for gas first. This is, of course, an aggressive opening. It lets you take control of the tempo of the early game TvT. It is an air superiority tank pressure openings. So really what you're doing is you're opening 2 Reapers and a Cyclone. You're potentially looking for damage with that. You're punishing your opponent if they're a little bit greedy. You're then getting out a Raven and some Vikings, so you've got really good anti-Banshee defense. And then you're going and pushing your opponent with 2 Siege tanks and using those Vikings and Ravens in the air to control the skies. This is rarely going to end the game with any of your pressures, whether it be the Cyclones and the Reaper, whether it be the Raven maybe dropping an auto turret, or the double siege tank push. But it's a good way to punish a greedy player, keep your opponent in check while being 100% safe. And because it allows you to always have quite a few units out, it allows you to get on the map and really take advantage of an opponent who's not watching too well what's going on. You guys all would have experienced this situation in TvT where you're playing, you're having a good time. Let's turn the game sound down slightly. You're having a good time, and then you're not watching, and they run up, and they just drop a couple of Reaper bombs on, like, your Cyclone and Marine sitting at the front of your base, and they just, you know, get bounced around, and you lose the fight simply because you weren't watching for 2 seconds, and the Reaper bombs just stopped your units from attacking for a few seconds, and you're like, oh, this is bullshit, turn versus turn, so stupid. Well, your aim is to be the guy who's inflicting that sort of mindset upon your opponent with this style. It's because it's easier to kind of dictate where you're looking and whether you're looking at the right spot at the right time if you're the one attacking. If you're just sitting at home with no vision, it's a lot harder. So I will, at some point later on, be doing a guide of TY's current expand build, the double Raven expand into 3rd CC, which is such a popular opening. But I do think that's a very different skill set, where for a super high level player that might actually be easier than this build because, you know, they're very good with their awareness, babysitting their units defensively. But I think for everybody else, this is actually a much easier opening to play. So let's go back, rehash this build quickly. I'm going to fast forward through, by the way, so we don't need to stress too much. I'm not going to spend more than like 3 or 4 minutes talking about the build from here. Okay, so like I said, gas first, so depot, gas, racks. Then you're going to drop a second gas on 17 supply, right about the 1 minute mark. So basically, as soon as you get money on 17 supply. From there, you're going to do the standard, go up to 19 supply, and then build an orbital as that barracks finishes, start a Reaper, immediately start a factory. You are delaying your expansion quite a bit with this build. Also on 20 supply, you want to be dropping a depot. Okay, simple enough. As soon as the factory finishes, you're going to start a Cyclone, and you're also going to put down a starport. Second Reaper queues up immediately. Now note, the guy who built this depot immediately queues up a third depot and then queues up going to your natural to take that command center. And that'll time out pretty well. He'll only have to sit at the natural for a few seconds. Cyclone starts up. Starport starts up. Those two Reapers are going to go, and you're going to look for pressure, look for damage. Preferably, you will really try and scout your opponent's natural to see, is he doing a fast expand build, or is he doing something more like what I'm doing? So that's a very important piece of info. There's a few rules we'll talk about with the Reapers and harassment units a little bit later. So like I said, this SCV finished building the depot, went down to the natural, and you'll normally have the money to put down that command center somewhere about 3 minutes 10, anywhere around this point. This is not a perfectly executed build. I was very tired yesterday, and like I said, I was really upset after my stream. I was so angry because it was such a good topic in yesterday's daily. I did it so badly. I just could not execute the build perfectly, but there's only a few very minor mistakes in this execution, so it's almost perfect. So what you're going to do there as well, you're going to swap. So let's just rewind very quickly, and then I'll speed it up. So you'll build a tech lab after the two Reapers. This starport should have been built next to the barracks, just to stop the flying time. You'll swap the barracks off, build a reactor, swap the starport on, build a Raven immediately. You want to start up more depot production as well, somewhere around 34, 35 supply. And then you want to swap your barracks off the reactor, build another reactor. Your starport will swap onto the reactor, and your factory swaps onto the tech lab. Try not to swap like that, kids. You want to prioritize siege tank production over Vikings, but you want to really be building both. And you should be able to get out 2 tanks and 4 Vikings very quickly. Your Raven will go to harass if there isn't really any threat of Banshees from your opponent. Of course, that's something based on your scouting. If you're not sure, you can always just leave that Raven at home. And then you'll see a second siege tank queues up. Just building SCVs here. So notice no third or fourth gas yet. No third command center yet. And then as you get the money, you're going to drop a second and third barracks. Now, this is where the build kind of changes it up. All I'm focusing on here mostly is the opening, guys. This as a solid defensive opening. Aggressive opening, I should say. And it's also defensive through the fact that you have plenty of units. From here, you could very easily go fast third command center. You could go straight to 5 barracks and do a 2-base all-in attack. There's many different options. You could even go mech from here if you choose to. However, these are not the options that I'm focusing on. I'm just going to show you guys very quickly a very middle of the road approach. What I've been doing lately on ladder, where you go 3 barracks. You're then going to go for a third gas immediately. You're then going to drop a third command center as you're pushing. So you see third command center will go down as I'm pushing. And then I'll drop double engineering bay. Double engineering bay will go down, and 4th and 5th barracks. I kind of put them at the same time because I'm shit and, you know, I don't spend my money that well. And yeah, then you've got your 2-base full production up. As your third gets saturated, you can add things like a second factory, and so on. By the way, as you add these extra barracks, you also need to add a 4th gas around the time you add all of that stuff. So there we go. The tank pressure. You move up, try and siege, do some damage. We're going to look at another replay to look at how you do that. Very simple opening. Air superiority allows your tanks to edge forward. Things like unupgraded Marines are pretty worthless against this push unless they intercept you outside of the base. And that's it. That's your opening. Super simple stuff. I want today's daily to be quick and efficient because that's what we're doing. We're looking at an opening. So we're going to hop into the other replay, and I'll talk a little bit just about that in an actual situation, where your focus should be and so on. And I think it actually helps that I don't execute this build perfectly, simply because it allows us to look at things in the context of something which a lot of the viewers, a lot of you guys who aren't necessarily pro gamers can apply yourselves. Of course, if you've got any questions, do shout them out in chat, and I'll answer them as we get towards the end of this replay. Okay, so what we're going to talk about is the units, how to use them, and what goes on. First things first, guys, the initial Reaper that pops out of your build. Okay, what about this Reaper? Now, a lot of people have lost their Reaper, and then it's kind of spiraled out of control. The enemy went 2 Reaper Cyclone as well, and he just kills you. You got to be careful. First rule is whenever you're in doubt, if you're going to win that fight or not, run home if you're in doubt. Just run away. Notice how I just run away there. So let's watch that one more time. Now, if you watch closely, you can try to see whose health bar goes down slightly faster in the engagement to see who got the first shot off. And if you realize that you are ahead and you're confident, you will stutter step immediately. Wait until just after your Reaper shoots to make sure you're not interrupting and slowing down his shooting. And then move forward, A move. Move forward, A move. Move forward, A move. Or move forward, A click. Doesn't matter. I wasn't sure in this scenario. So I throw down a Reaper bomb. I say, if he walks into that, I can keep fighting. He didn't. So I say, just go home. Just pull that away. Now, a lot of the time, you will put a little bit more focus on controlling your units in the early game of TvT because every unit is very important. So it's okay to miss a little bit of macro at home to focus on your units. It's not okay to miss a lot of macro at home to focus on your units. The reason, of course, is you only want to focus on those units when it's super important. It's a Reaper versus Reaper skirmish. Maybe you'll kill him. Maybe you won't. I've got to build things at home right now. Just send the Reaper back. Keep building your shit. As it goes on, as you get to the power points, as you get to the moment your Cyclone groups up with your first two Reapers and you're hitting their base, that's when you really want to look at your units. You want to see, can I get some damage done? So let's identify a couple of these points where you really want to focus. Okay, second Reaper's here. If he didn't build two Reapers, I might be able to do damage. So look, I'm very careful here. Poking up there, I'm like, oh, he's not standing on the high ground. Let's have a poke. And then I go, oh, wow, he's only got one Reaper. He's not watching. And bam, I get a big freebie there. But if I saw units on the high ground, if I came up and saw two Reapers and then they reacted and dodged the Reaper grenades, I would simply run away with these Reapers and I wouldn't put any APM into this until the moment that my Cyclone arrives. So you're poking, you're pressuring, and you're looking for damage, potentially. You're most importantly, though, looking to scout this command center. If there is a command center, you want to be a lot more aggressive with these units. You want to really try and see if you can get something done, especially if you catch a unit off like that Reaper, right? However, if they don't have that command center, you don't need to force your way in. If they're delaying their expansion, a lot of people say, do you still pressure with this if they don't have an expansion? You still poke, but the moment you see they've got as many units as you, you're very careful. You might try to drop the Reaper grenades, and if they don't react, then bam, yeah, go in, commit, kick ass. If he reacts, just pull back and get on out of there. You don't need to try to force damage to happen if your opponent hasn't expanded just like you. So you see here, I'm like, well, I killed the Cyclone. I might be able to just kill him. Try to run up the ramp. See, there's like 8 Marines there. And I'm like, okay, not going to be able to do anything. So just trying to, you know, see what damage I can get. And here's something you're going to see that's really interesting. So check this out. This is actually really cool. So I realize I need to macro. So what I'm going to do, right, is because I'm worried about him walking down that ramp, is I'm going to keep throwing Reaper bombs on this ramp. This is my vision as it was in game. And then I go, okay, because he's not going to walk into the Reaper grenade, I can go back macro. I built a depot, I queued up an SV, throw another Reaper grenade, and then I look back and start swapping my add-ons around. So you'll notice I'm trying to do just any small thing I can to say, okay, I really don't want to have to look back at the fighting for a few seconds. Let's de-incentivize him to come down that ramp with that Reaper grenade, and it's going to buy me just an extra 2 seconds to look back at home and control everything else. And I really think this is like the hardest part about Terran, is learning when you can look at home, when you can look at the fight. And if you're ever unsure, just click your units away, pull them a screen away from combat, and then look home and do your macro. Number one mistake players make, who don't have 100,000 games of StarCraft, especially Terran players, is they just leave their units like attacking the enemy, and then they just like look home and macro for 30 seconds. They look back and their army's gone, and it's like, oh, everything died. And it's like, why not just pull your units back half the screen, macro quickly, and then you can go back and send the units back in. Sometimes people get a little bit too over eager to keep the pressure up, and that can really hurt them as well. So we see here the Raven went across the map as well. Well, should your Raven always go across the map? Remember, guys, I've done a lot of damage. I killed a Cyclone, I killed a Reaper. I knew he went a fast Reaper and a Cyclone after an expansion. Now that already tells me he doesn't have a Banshee. Let me explain to you guys why. Some of you might not understand exactly how all these Terran builds line up, but you really should. If you do an expand build, just like our friendly neighborhood Dolan here has done. Shout out to Dolan, by the way. This was just a ladder game, so Apologize for showing one of your losses, Dolan. But we've had quite a few good ladder get matches lately. Notice the starport's not down. Why is the starport not down, guys? The starport's not down because he's built the Cyclone. With an expansion build, a Terran player cannot afford to start their starport immediately after the factory finishes, while also building a fast Cyclone. So simply by seeing the Cyclone, I'm actually able to rule out any fast Banshee play. He could still go for a delayed Banshee, but it would be super delayed, because keep in mind, already, he's done an expand build, which means even if we went straight for starport, it would be slower than mine. Now take into account the fact that he's also built a Cyclone, it's delayed it even more. It's like, yeah, I don't need to worry about Cyclones for a very long time. So that's actually a very important piece of information, which the moment I see this Cyclone, I'm able to draw from this. That piece of information leads into me knowing I can send my Raven straight across the map. Because I was a little bit busy microing, I think my Raven sits at home for quite a little while. That's just me being sloppy. It could have hit like 30 seconds earlier before the Viking even got out, and it would have actually been sick. Oh no, the Viking was out super early. Anyway, it would have been better. Cool. But yeah, that's essentially it, guys. I'm going to just put this on my camera while I look at some questions while we watch the tank push. I guess there's a few notes on the actual tank push as well. Now, what if you are versing Banshees? Do drop a single engineering bay around the time your second and third barracks go down. So when the second and third barracks go down, normally drop an engineering bay, because you will need a turret in each mineral line, because your Raven's going to go across the map with your push. So obviously, if you know it's Banshees, your Raven stays home at first, you try and defend, but you also want to get up that fast engineering bay and drop turrets. Now this game, I dropped the engineering bay for whatever reason, but didn't actually drop the turrets because I knew it wasn't a Banshee play. And I do just kind of push on across this map. Do I always push with the tanks? How hard do I commit here? And when should I pull back? That's a question a friend of mine asked when I was just asking him about this push. I said, basically you're aiming to deny a bit of mining with this push. On their natural, if possible. But you always want to scout ahead with the Ravens and Vikings. This time I didn't do it as much because, well, he can't be over here, you know? If I had to push up here to siege, then I would have been scouting ahead with my Ravens and Vikings a bit more. On this map, and a few of the new maps, you actually have some really nasty positions on the back of your opponent's natural. On Proxima Station, you can do this exact same sort of situation where you run down behind the natural, siege up, and I think you can actually deny like the entire mineral line on Proxima. It's brutal. So this is a sort of passive push. What's great about this is you don't need a lot of APM on this. Notice I'm just sieging it up, and most of my attention is actually on the macro back home. So this isn't the sort of push where you do this and you're like, ugh, I need to stare at this the whole time. Ugh. And the general rule is if you're denying mining or killing workers, but you're not actually killing fighting units, after about a minute of arriving, your opponent normally has enough units just out of constant unit production to roll over your push. So you have the option of either think, well, I'm being annoying enough, it's worth staying here. Let's just try and hang on and trade out as best we can. See if we can keep denying mining to the last possible second. Or you can just do a tactical retreat. You can say, I've already done damage. Let's just unsiege and go home. Save all my tanks. Keep all my units alive. And that's also something you can do with this push. I actually start just trying to be as annoying as possible and actually scanning, even though it's probably not worthwhile. Just because I figure let's just be a real pain in the ass. I figure that's going to waste mining time. It'll tilt him. It'll throw him off balance. It's not worth it money-wise, but it might be worth it psychologically. So what about with that tank push very quickly, just to finish up here, do you always commit? Do you always go in? When don't you do it? Well, like I said, you always scout ahead with the Ravens and Vikings. Say it was a more standard map where you're pushing up to siege here. If you see like 10 Hellions here, 12 Hellions or something, you might want to consider turning around because those Hellions can just jump on top of your tanks, Marines, and Cyclones. If it's just Hellions with nothing else, maybe you could take it, but it's going to be a little bit nasty and your tanks are going to need to stay unsieged. What if there's 3 or more Cyclones? They've got like 3 Cyclones and a bunch of Marines. Basically anything that's a bigger army than you, that's nice and mobile and fast. So Hellions and Cyclones, units that can jump on top of your siege tanks, only take a single volley before they're on top of you. They're going to do really well. So against those pushes, you want to be very careful with how you push. Likewise, if you ever go ahead with your Ravens and Vikings and you see they're already moving down their ramp out front to greet you with an army just as large or bigger than yours, that's another situation where you just go, oh shit, I can't commit. You like siege up back here. You hang around for 30 seconds to a minute, trying to edge forward if you can, and then you just kind of pick up and go home. And you say, that's fine, I didn't do damage, he had enough units. That's okay. I checked that he had enough units, I checked he wasn't being exceptionally greedy, I didn't get the damage done, and that is all okay. As always, with most aggression that is just a light pressure like this, you don't have any sort of, absolute need to just kill your opponent. You just want to make sure your opponent's being honest at the very least. And that is about it, guys. So, let me just leave this on my camera. Let's see what questions there are in Twitch chat. And see if there is anything appropriate there. Looks like there isn't too much. Creature Slime says, what is this build or opener weak against? Well, it is an aggressive opening that delays your command center roll. So just generally speaking, you can look at this opening and say, if your opponent expands, defends your aggression very well, then they can be ahead, right? And then if they build enough units and aren't surprised by the tank push, if they move out and intercept your tank push while it's moving out, then they can be in a really good position. The reason that that's very hard for the opponent to do is because you've got out the 2 Reapers and the Cyclone, you've got this very good amount of map dominance. If your opponent's ever not watching, like in this game, you can snap a Reaper, snap a Cyclone, and then you get a crazy amount of tempo. It's very hard for your opponent, even if they defend all those moves correctly, to then also have the foresight to realize the fast double tank push is coming and to be in position to intercept that. So there's quite a few waves which work, and you've got to remember, like I said, even if you're not doing damage, yes, you delay your expansion, but you're rock solid against your opponent's aggression. So this is a very good way to play if your opponent's also going a delayed expansion. And it's just generally going to give you good flexibility, and you do get your economy up. It's slightly delayed, but it's not massively delayed. You're not going all in or anything. So you still have a very good transition off this economically. As we see this game, 3rd command center, 5 barracks, all this sort of stuff is up by this 8-minute 30 mark. Citrus Eskimo says, if your opening doesn't do enough damage as you want, do you keep playing aggressive with your Raven, or do you wait for the Vikings and the tank? Really, with the Raven, Eskimo, it just comes down to if there's a Banshee or not. You always would love to go and drop an auto turret, or maybe even a second auto turret in their mineral line when possible. But that's only if you don't need the Raven at home to defend Banshees. So it doesn't really matter whether or not you did damage early on, it just depends. Is your Raven allowed to go across the map in that specific game state? Because if they've gone Banshees and you send your Raven across the map, it's a pretty bad idea. You can end up in a bad situation. You don't need to change up your game plan if you're not doing damage with one of your waves. It still works out just fine. What if the opponent drops you while you push, says Creature Slime? Well, then they drop you while you push. They're not going to have anything at home. You're not going to have much at home. You're going to have to fight with SCVs and whatever's rallying out. They're going to have to fight with SCVs and whatever's rallying out. It's going to get chaotic. You're both going to end up in a dicey position. No one's going to have stim at that stage of the game. It's a very fast pressure. So, a couple of Marines and a medevac is not the end of the world. You've just got to take that situation as it is. Whoops, sorry guys. Put that on my camera. Wolfhowl says, my biggest question is, when do you decide to take the pressure home? Is it ever worth it to leave your units to die? Well, like I said before, it comes down to, you want to pressure, you want to deny mineral patches, but if you're not killing army units, like sometimes someone will go, oh shit, and they'll just pull all their units in and just get wrecked, and they'll just lose the game, because they throw their whole army away and don't break your tanks, and it's like, well, okay, I just win the game from here, because I'm denying your mineral patches and you can't overwhelm it. But like I said, exactly the same as in this game, if we go back to that moment, that game is almost over. I've just got way too much stuff. I will show you guys the end of the game later because I like showing games where I win. But because I'm not killing units, I've been here for 20, 30 seconds. Been here, it gets up to about 40 seconds where I've been here, I think. 45 seconds, and he's got enough units that he's grouped up. And this is the general rule. They should be able to group up enough units. However, even at this point, I think he pushes in a little bit too early. If my Reaper, Hellion, and Cyclone were closer to the tank, if I pulled them back, if these tanks were closer together, they are too far apart to cover each other. This is actually sloppy. And then if I pull back and then I drop a Reaper grenade right about here, A Reaper grenade combined with the siege tank volleys, these Marines are almost worthless. This is what I was talking about with unupgraded Marines are worthless. Hellions, Cyclones, fast, mobile units that are a little bit meatier, going to do a lot better. But unupgraded Marines going to do trash. The siege tanks will do okay, but the auto turrets are incredible against these pushes as well. So the more energy you save on those Ravens, the harder it is for your opponent to break. So if I'd kept my siege tanks closer together, maybe saved a little bit more Raven energy, used a Reaper grenade, I probably would have maintained this position with both siege tanks alive, massacred his army, and just won the game. However, once it gets to about, say I hit at 6 minutes, 6 minutes 15. Once it gets to about 7 minutes 15, if he hasn't tried to break it, I know he's just got too many units. That's the 1 minute mark that I was talking about before. Remember the magic 1 minute mark where it's like, okay, he should have enough units to break this. And it is totally up to you based on whether you want to pull those units home and keep them alive or not. I would love to pull those units home and keep them alive if you can safely do so. If he's already flanking around behind you, getting ready to surround, you might not have the opportunity. So you just say, whatever. I might get the mobile units out of there if I can, but otherwise I'll just trade off as well as I can. Even if you lose your units, it's fine because you've already denied a lot of mining time. And that answers that. All right, so 1 minute. That magic 1 minute mark is exactly what you want. So while we watch the end of this game, guys, I do want to say a big thank you to everyone for watching. We can just kind of watch my final push as I set this up here. I am no savant of TvT, as I was saying at the start of the episode. If you guys are in GM, if you're a really top-level player, you might notice some inefficiencies in my play. And that's absolutely fine. There definitely are some. But I think this is something where talking about how to focus on that aggression, also dictating the pace of the game with this sort of style while being very safe against things like Banshees, I do think this is something which should help out a lot of you players on ladder. And hopefully it can. Feel free to shout out any questions on YouTube or in the comment section below. And let us watch this final maneuver here. Just continuing to siege this natural. Do apologize for the frame drops. And find an opportunity there to move on in. Tries to deal with this as best he can. All my Marines do go down. Tries to go for the Doom drop, but the Vikings are punishing the medevac so hard. And GG. Alright, thank you for watching, guys. Don't forget to hug a watermelon, kick a walrus, and of course, punch a cactus to the moon. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye and good night. Punched the mic accidentally again.